The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Business Development 2.0, How Dealmakers Find Clients in the Digital Age. This webinar is presented to you in partnership with Navitor. You can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your GoToWebinar toolbar to ask questions. The questions will be monitored, and the presenters will answer as many as possible during or after today's presentation. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted on acg.org's website along with the slides from today's presentation. Thank you again for joining us. Now I will turn it over to Nicholas Donato, Marketing Manager at Navatar.
Hey, thanks, Cassie, and allow me to welcome everyone as well to the show where we will be presenting this Business Development 2.0 strategy, which really is just our way of saying that, look, there's a new tier of M&A bankers and private equity firms that are making full use of new processes and new tools out there that help them cut through the fog when it comes to finding their next client or their next deal. So we want to show you where the latest technology has taken the market, and in addition to that, how Dealmakers are using that technology to simplify their workload when it comes to nurturing prospects and closing deals. Again, I'm Nick Donato. I'm an industry strategist here at Navitar, which is a cloud software provider for M&A firms and private equity shops. And as Cassie mentioned, we encourage you to submit questions. Just use that GoToWebinar tool there. What I've done is just reserve some time at the end of our presentation to field them. Now, moving on to the next slide, you may be wondering what gives Navitar credibility on this topic. And well, look, the short answer is that we work with M&A advisors and private equity firms every day on how to optimize their business development strategy. We've pulled those clients off of Excel and basic CRM and onto smart platforms that allow them to really nurture thousands of relationships at once without ever losing sight of where the next deal is going to be coming from. Navitar, by the way, has over 600 customers now across 35 countries. Both of those counts are growing. We are a Salesforce Gold ISV partner, and we integrate with Box. And what that means is that we've taken the two biggest names in cloud security and we've integrated them to build a platform that comes ready out of the box. It's been totally configured to your business model. So moving on to the next slide, I want to quickly set out the agenda. We want to show you first the latest thinking on business development, and we'll break that down into three parts. First, how you should be segmenting your prospects. Two, the best way to nurture those prospects and really just begin building the relationship. And then three, how to tier those prospects so that you can identify which of them are going to be most receptive to your marketing messaging and so maybe ready for new business. And then from there, we won't leave you hanging. We'll give you our insights into what happens when a new deal comes in. And here too, technology is changing the game because, well, the project management and due diligence phases of a new deal opportunity are probably one of the most stressful parts of the job that you have as a deal maker. Having to sync up collaboration with both all of your internal colleagues and analysts, as well as any external advisors you're using, like lawyers and accountants and consultants, that usually means a lot of different documents and different versions are zipping back and forth from the office, and we'll show you why that's an inefficient process. Well, then from there, I'm excited to say that we'll hear from Beth Seidler of Clearsight Advisors, which is a leading M&A advisory firm that focuses on business services and technology. And Beth will provide us some flavor on how Clearsight has implemented the strategy that we plan to show you here today. And then finally, again, we'll just take your audience questions. So that's the game plan. And the reason that we bring this topic up today is that one of your biggest challenges as a deal maker was probably the sheer number of prospects that you have to manage. So there are a lot of prospects that you have to nurture relationships with over what should be a long period of time. We're not talking about months here. We're talking about years. And the ideal situation for everyone is you get to know these businesses. You have a relationship with the owners of those businesses, but obviously that's a difficult goal to obtain when there are thousands of companies that you have to reach out to. And so, and there may not just be enough analysts to do it, right? So we want to show you how technology and new processes can help execute on that strategy. And here to show us that and provide some examples is Kate and Conquer Kane, let's move on to the next slide and allow you to introduce yourself, and then we can begin showing this 2.0 strategy.
Thanks, Nick. This is Ketan Khankar from Navitor. I head Navitor's product strategy and oversee all the different products that we provide to the marketplace. So for today's webinar, what we thought we'd do, let's switch screens here. Give me just a second. I'll take some examples and we'll walk through some of the challenges and some of the issues that Nick had mentioned earlier. So we'll start obviously with the business development side of things. Again, the challenge, like Nick mentioned, lots and lots of prospects that you have to reach out to and not enough resources in-house. So we'll go over let's take the first step, right? The first step is to get the right list of all the clients in there. Again, you have access to lots of data sources nowadays. You can go ahead, specify your own criteria. You could say, well, depending on the industries that you focus on, the deal sizes that you look at, you can search and actually get a list of more targeted companies, right? So these are more likely to respond to you because based on the criteria, based on the size of the businesses, you are already narrowing down and identifying the companies that will be more receptive to your outreach and obviously form your target base. So you can create the list, you can import them into Navitor, and what we'll have is what we call as your watch list. Right, so all of you probably have this watch list in some shape or form, right? So we'll go through a few different strategies. I'll go through 4 different strategies that you have in terms of how to market to this list. And start with the basic one where, again, if you have a list, you can always keep sending emails to the entire list, right? So you're doing like a broad-based strategy, reaching out to the entire list of companies on your watch list. We don't really recommend that, but again, we do see that happening in the marketplace. The challenge with that, obviously, is that it becomes treated as spam. A lot of the content is not relevant. The second strategy would be to tailor the content. So if you have this list, and again, you know the industries that they belong in, and you have some more intelligence and information about these companies, we do recommend that you run more targeted marketing campaigns, right? So for example, I have my communication campaign out here. And let's say I just closed a transaction. I closed a deal. I want to share the deal announcement with all of the people on my watch list. Again, we recommend tailoring it down. So instead of sending it to everyone who's on my watch list, what we would suggest is filter this and only send it to the companies that are in the technology industry, right? So why are we doing that? Because it increases, first of all, it's the content is something that's applicable to them. So now I've shortlisted that. I can go ahead, select the right content. So maybe if it's a deal announcement, I can go ahead, select the announcement and send it out, right? So again, why are we doing all of this? Because the content is now more relevant, more likely that the people who are receiving this are going to read and open the email and read the content because it's a transaction that's in their industry. So that was number 2. The third way will be tiering, and what this allows you to do is segmenting your watch list, obviously in multiple tiers, but also then having a different outreach strategy for each of these tiers. So for tier 1, for example, I may want to reach out every quarter. Tier 2 could be every 6 months, and tier 3 could be like a drip campaign, which is just going down and they're receiving communication from you, but you don't actively reaching out to them. In terms of managing these tiers, again, Navitor can help you remind. So again, going back to my tier 1 example, it'll automatically remind me that today is time for me to do my quarterly outreach with all my tier 1 list. How do you come up with tiers? lots of different options. It could be based on kind of the number of touch points you've had with a specific company. It could be based on emails that you're sending out, how many emails have been opened. So there are different ways in which you can come up with these tiers. Again, keep in mind the tiers tend to be iterative in process. So as you run through the process, you can kind of change the tiers, and companies may go from tier 2 to tier 1. So that is sort of the third way in which you can do this. A fourth way is, and I'll change the view to show what we're calling as an intelligent watch list, which is in addition to the tiers, or really what's driving the tiers is almost like a rating system. And I'll touch upon this. The concept is all the communication that you're sending out to all these prospects. They are many times opening the emails, clicking on those emails. Many times you do have feedback into which emails were opened, what links were clicked. But imagine if kind of someone clicks on the email, what you don't know is where did they end up on your website? How much time did they spend on your website? Have they kind of, were they interested in specific topics? All those aspects are also important because what they're telling you is the level of engagement that the prospect has with any communication that's going on. So let me take an example, right? So let's say one of the prospects that you're sending emails to is Nancy Harrington. Right? So let me log in as Nancy. So if I'm Nancy, I see an email coming from you. It's about a specific topic, and let's say it's of interest for me. I'll click on read more. And kind of I get to a website, and it's showing me information about this webinar. I can go ahead and register for this. Maybe I want to look at the blog. I can go ahead and kind of look at the blog, read some of the contents related to the blog. Again, a lot of these websites. So I'm spending time on the website. All of this is important information for me because this is showing me that Nancy is engaged and interested. And guess what? We track everything on Nancy's profile back in Navitor. Right? So if I'm looking at Nancy's profile, I'll see that she's got a score of 4 because she viewed the webinar, she went to the blog, registered for a webinar. So all of these actions that she took allow me to specify a ranking mechanism that's identifying a score for me here. Contrast that with, let's say, another contact, Neil. Neil has a score, much higher score because he's been more actively involved with all the communication. He's visited a lot more pages, looked at a lot more details, and then I can obviously go and see all the other details related to all the actions that he's taken. Right? So I can see information about all of that in here. All of this is feeding into my watch list score here, and this can also drive my segmentation strategy. Right? So capturing all of these details, capturing all the interactions, capturing how the prospects are reacting to the communication that you're sending to them allows me to now have a more analytical or scientific method to rate them. And again, what would be obvious to all of you is these are the companies that are more likely to be receptive to my outreach. So if I pick up the phone tomorrow and try to reach out to some of these companies, one, they have already heard about me, and they've heard about the company, they have expressed some kind of interest, and that now gives me a better chance to have a conversation, maybe possibly set up a meeting. Now, the concept I covered so far was more around prospects and reaching out to prospects and getting them as clients. Applies to both private equity and M&A firms. From a private equity perspective, obviously these would be companies that you're looking to invest in. But the concept is the same, thousands of companies, and trying to reach out and kind of form a connection there. This concept also applies to 2 other scenarios. So if I'm an M&A firm, I also may be doing a lot of business development with buyers. Again, slightly different concept, but I'm reaching out to them periodically, and kind of, again, I need reminders, and I want to tier my buyers, and I want to have a communication and outreach strategy with my buyers. Similarly, on the private equity side, I have my intermediaries, which are all the M&A firms. I want to have a tiering strategy for the intermediaries. And out here, you have a lot more metrics like this will show me, which is if I'm a private equity firm, I can not only see all my intermediaries, I can actually, again, do a rating mechanism based on how many deals have they shown us compared to how many deals were there in the market. Right? So someone like a Citigroup, for example, showed us 18 deals, which is great, but we are at the low end of their attention because they had 67 deals in the market last year. Right? So again, metrics like these allow me to tier them and segment them and then have a communication strategy related to that. Okay, so now what we've done is we've done the marketing, we've rated them, we've ranked them, and I've closed some of the tabs. And now we have a list of companies that we know will be more receptive to an actual meeting that's happening. Right? So I can go in, look at my business development pipeline, if you will. I see a list of all the different companies out here. Let's say I'm interested in technology and only looking at certain types of companies. I can drill down and narrow it down to just the technology companies in here. So I can see a list of all the companies in my specific sector. Let's take a look at one of them, Sumo Logic. So now that it's time for me to reach out and kind of have a discussion with any company, one of the key things in here is to get more information and more intelligence, right? So when I look at Sumo Logic, for example, I'm able to see all the investors in this company. I can see that they've already raised over 200 million. So again, a good data point for me to know about. All of these things are important for me to know before I pick up the phone and call this company. Similarly, I want to see if they've been in the news, right? So I can go in there, I can look at what news has been there about Sumo Logic. And here I see that they were named to the Forbes 2018 Cloud 100 list. I can go look at the news release, see the information, and again, it gives me a reason. I can now send a congratulatory note to them, right? So all of this intelligence is allowing me to have a more meaningful outreach when I pick up the phone. Another thing is if you're attending conferences, right? So as I look at Sumo Logic, I can see that they're going to several different conferences. Right? So I see the RSA conference. Let me see if it's worth going there. Right? Now, again, the concept is all of these conferences that I need to go to, I need to have a better reason to go to, right? I can see right now that there are around 480 companies that are attending this conference. One of them is Sumo Logic. My real interest is if I'm going all the way there, do I have the chance of meeting anyone else in my target list? And how here is actually narrowing it down and showing to me that 11 companies in my watch list are also attending this conference. So now again, it makes my decision much easier because I have a chance of meeting not just Sumo Logic, but also all of these other companies. So again, as you're thinking about your business development process, part of it is the marketing piece, part of it is, which I'm covering now, is the outreach and actually having the interactions with these companies. Taking the same example, if I am going to San Francisco for that conference, now I need to figure out if there is someone else I can meet. Right? So if I'm going there, I can map and I can see here's Sumo Logic in Redwood City. Let me see if there are other prospects in a 50-mile radius. And so I can go in there, do a search right here. And again, from a business development perspective, what I'm trying to do is if I'm making a trip, if I'm planning a trip there, can I meet other prospects? Right? So now it shows that I have actually several prospects that I can reach out to. I see the entire list of all these prospects out here. So now I can pick up the phone, have someone else or maybe my assistant call and set up appointments with these companies. So this is how you take the processes one step forward with all the intelligence that you have about these companies. Similarly, what we also recommend is streamlining all the processes that you have got going with these prospects, right? So even simple things. but I'm kind of talking to Sumo Logic and now I need to get an NDA in place. I don't need to waste too much time in following up chasing paperwork. I can just go in here, generate the NDA directly from here, and send it out for e-signature. So all of that is something that I can easily do right from here within a few minutes. I don't need to keep track of where it is because once it's sent out, Navitor tells me where the document is, right? So I can see I generated the NDA, let's say I sent it out. When I look at Sumo Logic, I see under agreements that it's actually out waiting for counter signature. And all of these are now available on my mobile phone. So if I'm on my phone, I can see that the NDA came in. I can go in there. I can click on the link, sign the NDA, and kind of all of this all happening in real time. And that once the counter signatures are completed, all of that goes back into the Navitor system. Right. So again, taking the step forward, you're kind of moving through and kind of taking the business development step forward. Now, all of these obviously are feeding your pipeline, right? So all of these companies, prospects that you're reaching out to, doing the marketing and kind of following up with, are feeding kind of feeding your business development pipeline. Now I can see all my deals in one place, right? So all the deals that we have in my business development pipeline, I can see them out there. If I want to kind of get a view in terms of how it happens in a process, I can see kind of from a process perspective all the deals that I have in the pipeline. And again, we'll not go into details around that, but the concept is you have kind of all the deals that are feeding your business development pipeline. You're feeding them through a process, and you can kind of go through and manage this pipeline. Obviously, you're meeting on a regular basis, and at any point you can also generate a quick PDF report that can be sent over for your Monday morning discussions that you're having with your team internally. So this is something that can be sent over and emailed to your entire team too. Now, again, continuing the process forward, as I'm talking to these prospects, they may be communicating with them. I may have email exchanges with them. Again, I could be in Outlook and I can go in here, look at any deal any prospect that I'm working on right from Outlook, update the information about the deal right here from Outlook itself. Again, all of these things are tools that are available that are now helping drive the process that you have forward. Now we'll go into the second aspect of kind of from an agenda perspective. We talked about due diligence and managing and project management related to the deals that you have, right? So what happens is, and we'll cover it for both M&A and private equity, right? So when you're working on a deal and it goes into due diligence, one is there are lots and lots of documents, right? So you do need the ability to manage these documents, but it's not just a question of managing these documents, right? So I can have related to the deal all the documents in there. The client is providing me with documents, so I can see obviously all the documents that they have sent over. But there is a lot of collaboration that needs to happen now, right? So for example, I sent over the SIM. Now I need to circulate that in-house. Internally, everyone needs to provide comments. I can actually, with these advanced tools that are available, create an online forum so that I don't need to send this back and forth. Each of my colleagues can look at and review and give their inputs into kind of the documents that they are reviewing. Similarly, as I go deeper into due diligence, there'll be lots of questions that come up, right? So these questions I'm sending, if I'm a private equity firm, what I'm doing is creating these questions based on the documents I'm seeing, right? I need a way to collaborate on these documents. It's a nightmare for the analysts to keep track of versions and keep emailing these documents back and forth. But now, as I'm preparing a list of all these documents, I can have all of them available in collaboration, kind of collaborate in Excel itself. So I can see all the document. I can go and update it. All my team members can go and update it in real time. And as as they update this document and add more details and intelligence, all of that gets saved back on the deal. Similarly, on the counter side of things, if I'm an M&A firm, right, I'm receiving all these questions from everyone, right? So all of these documents are coming in. Guess what? I need to keep track of. I'm maybe talking to 10 different buyers. Each buyer has sent me 20 different questions. I need to make sure we respond to all of them, right? So I can now, with respect to the deal, I can actually track all the questions that I have that we've received from all the different buyers. Right? So I can see all the questions that have come in, status related to that, our responses related to that. I can get a quick status in terms of where we stand with respect to all these questions. So out of 228, and we've closed 13, so most of them are open, and I can manage this process. A lot of times this is happening in Excel. I can be in Excel, and I can actually download all the questions. So if I look at all the questions that are still open, I can see them in Excel. I can see what the questions are, okay. And if I'm offline or like working in Excel, I can just enter it here and go ahead and update it right from here. So I could be in Excel and keep updating everything related to any of the processes in here. Second thing, similar to the managing in the due diligence process, is this whole project management, right? So I have lots and lots of action items that we're doing. We have a lot of detailed processes, a lot of action items and assigned to different people. It's a very detailed process and consumes a lot of time. I now get a much better view because I can see the entire process in here. I can see that we're only 33% done in due diligence, right? We've done the SIM review, we've had the management meeting, still going through the financial projections. We have not touched on any of these other action items that we need to do in order to manage the deal. And I can go even in more detail and look at the actual Gantt chart and look at kind of the project plan and manage costs and all of that related to the due diligence process. And so you can see all of this information, who is responsible within that. I can kind of see on a timeline basis where we are, what do we still need to do. So all of these are new tools that are now allowing our customers to manage their due diligence process in a much more streamlined manner. So those were some of the kind of concepts that we wanted to cover in our presentation today. Nick, with that, let me turn it back to you, and I'll bring back the slides in just a second.
Nice, Ketan. And to bring some additional flavor to the strategy that we have just outlined here, as I mentioned, we're joined here today by Beth Seidler, who is co-founder and Director of Operations for ClearSight Advisors, a leading M&A advisory firm. Beth, why don't you describe who you are and your firm, and then I want to get into some specifics of how ClearSight has implemented this business development 2.0 strategy that we've seen here today.
Sure, yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Beth Seidler, and as Nick mentioned, I'm a co-founder and the Director of Operations here at ClearSight Advisors. We're a DC-based M&A shop. We work exclusively with growth-oriented business services and technology firms, and really have built our processes from the ground up. We launched the firm in 2011, and over the last little over 7 years have come a long way, I think, as far as how we keep track of our prospects and our deals and the whole process in between. And if you've been in banking or financial services long enough to remember the days of pacing back and forth in front of the fax machine on bid day, you probably also kept track of your deals and prospects with Excel and relied solely on Outlook contacts. And as you've just seen, we've come a long way since there. So just happy to share, some best practices that we implement at ClearSight, and share how that's been a key to one of our successes as a firm.
Thanks, Beth. And why don't we start with segmentation? Because something that Kayan had mentioned was that you want to break your prospects down into different geographies and different sectors. Now, this is probably something that most of you are already doing, but what we want to recommend is that you go another layer. So, Beth, if you could describe or provide a sense of what types of information, whenever you have a new prospect that comes in, that you found has proven useful, that way that when you run, say, a search query later or doing some segmentation strategy later, you're happy that you've put in that additional criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. The segmentation is absolutely the key to success. And the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And, as an M&A advisory firm, we have a couple of different constituencies, right? We have our targets for transactions, we have our referral sources, and we have our buyers. In each one of those constituencies, we collect a different set of information. And the more information we can collect, the easier it is for us to reach out to those groups when we need to use that. And so we use account status. We basically segment horizontally and vertically. And what I mean by that is that for all the different industry verticals that we cover, we have even more, subsectors that we can get really granular with where that account fits as far as how we view the world. And then horizontally, as far as, who's keeping track of that account and what the status is, based on, and the status changes with how far in the future do we feel like this company is going to transact. So it goes, from being just, somebody that we've just met to a hot prospect, and hot prospect means we believe that they're going to transact within the next 6 to 9 months. And so, those kinds of things you have to update, as often as you can to keep it more fluid so that you're reaching out to them with the right kind of messaging. And so we have, to keep track of that individually, we have individual dashboards that people can, keep track of their own accounts and prospects and buyer groups so that they can keep in touch with them. They can measure their own KPIs, and we can be productive with our overall messaging as a firm.
Yeah, and Beth, something that we heard Kayan mention as well is that there are some M&A firms and private equity firms that will email blast their entire list. I think that's useful if you're doing something that's good for brand building, like a deal announcement, or maybe you open up a new office. But correct me if I'm wrong, ClearSight does segment its list so that it can create targeted content and targeted messaging because of that segmentation strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you don't do that, you're setting yourself up for failure, because if you don't segment your list, then you're going to have a higher unsubscribe rate. And then, if someone's unsubscribed, then they're not going to hear your message anymore. So we always, when we close a deal or we hire somebody or we open a new office, we want to tell the whole world that. And then we take a secondary messaging down to the targeted, segment of, if we do a big data deal, right, we'll send a secondary announcement or more of a deal snapshot or some more targeted messaging to our prospects or constituency group that has more to deal with that specific target area. And, similarly, if we profile, a deal that happened in the marketplace, we'll send that profile out to that specific industry focus area subsect in our database, because if you're a compliance company, you're going to want to hear about reg tech. But if you're a software company, you're probably not interested in it, and you're more likely to want to hit the unsubscribe button because it's not relevant, it doesn't apply to you. So you want to make sure that you're keeping good segmented targeted lists so that the people who you want to get your message will receive that targeted message. And that not only helps to build your position as the thought leader in that industry, but also as an authority and someone that when you're thinking about big data or compliance or one of the other sections that we cover in the industry, they're going to reach out to us when they have an idea or they have a company or an opportunity that we can look at together.
And that's a nice segue into lead scoring, because something that Kate had showed during the beginning of the presentation was that, look, you've got thousands of prospects to nurture relationships with, and then you want to start tiering them. So a tier one may be someone that you reach out to more often. So the question I have for you, Beth, is if we could provide some color onto how that lead scoring goes. So what types of touch points are you tracking? How do you score them where someone would be elevated to a tier one, or maybe they're not as receptive to you and so they're knocked back to a tier two?
Right, exactly. And the beautiful thing about using this technology and the third-party vendors that integrate with Navitar nicely, whether it's HubSpot or Pardot, whatever you're choosing to use as a third-party integrator, all that scoring happens automatically. You're not manually doing it. It all happens kind of behind the scenes, and then you can set up, each one of my selling partners gets an automated email that says, so-and-so opened an email or came to the website or filled out a form or whatever it is, and so that they can help keep track of how their prospects are moving up in the whatever score they have, they automatically kind of move up. And so you can set those parameters yourself based on what your business goals are as a firm. For us, if someone opens an email, they get 3 points. If they download the white paper, they get another 5 points. If they click through the other content in the email, they get another 5 points. If they fill out a form, they get 50 points. And so you can kind of figure out how you want to organize that and then set the parameters, and then it automatically does the work for you. And you just get a notification that, so-and-so just opened this email again, you should reach out to them.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because more and more M&A shops and private equity firms are beginning to do this. But what they're encountering is that they have different tools and different software for tracking different things. So one thing may be telling them somebody visited your website. Another thing may be telling them somebody downloaded your form. Another thing may be telling, hey, someone clicked on your email to read about an office announcement. Unless you're using a platform that can have all those different systems speaking to each other, you have some poor analyst who's having to tally those things up. So that's important.
It's information overload.
Yeah, information overload, exactly. And then another thing is, well, speaking of automation, is Beth, I believe you guys you utilize auto alerts. So your executives, your partners are getting an email in the morning saying, hey, someone reached this score. It's time to reach out. They may be primed for business.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can, each one of the users can log in to the application, and they can set up those parameters themselves. So if they would like a daily email, they get a daily email. If they want to get a weekly email, they can set it up that way as well. I have one partner who, wants a notification every time any one of his prospects opens anything, and I don't want to know what his inbox looks like, but, you can customize the alerts as well. But it's all automatic so that you don't have to go in and comb through the information to find out who's looking at what, which is really great because, we're not only are we sourcing deals, but we're also executing deals at the same time. So it's really helpful to have a tool that not only helps us keep track of the execution, but also the sourcing, because we all know that printed deals prints deals. So we have to continually fill the pipeline and keep executing at the same time.
Beth, one final question for you, and then I'm going to turn it over to audience Q&A. And are you tracking your win-loss ratio, so converting a prospect into a client?
Yeah, so I think if you're not always trying to improve what you're doing and making quote unquote it better, then you're probably not growing as a firm. And so that's kind of the new frontier for us, is doing a better job of taking a closer look at our win-loss ratio and how it changes and what we can do to make it better, so that forward-looking, 18, 24 months from now, we can measure back and see how successful our efforts have been and where we can continue to improve and tweak our messaging a little bit.
Well, thanks, Beth. I'm hoping that you could stick around because we may need some of your input for these questions. I see that they have started trickling in. If we could move to that final slide. And I'm going to start with Mark here. I'll leave your last names anonymous. He's saying that a lot of the CRM platforms I look at today, like Salesforce, are too complicated for my business. We're a smaller firm. Is there something more simple that we can use? Kate, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, so that's a great point, and I think many of these, including Navitar, actually, depending on how you want to use it, you have the ability to simplify it, right? So we do it for a lot of our customers where they buy into the vision, but they feel it'll take them a year or two to get there. Or they can start with a simpler version, start using kind of the basics, and then grow with the platform. So you can do that with Navitor.
Someone, I think they're responding to the due diligence functionality that you showed, Kate, and they're saying, does the system have the ability to set up sharing between all parties? In other words, would the lawyer, would the consultant need to have a Navitar license as well in order for them to collaborate on the same document?
You do have the ability to share documents outside of your company too. So yeah, you will be able to do collaboration that way.
Okay, great. Someone's asking, what does a successful email marketing strategy look like? I'll partially take that one. You heard Beth mention that she's segmenting her list so that, look, your healthcare prospects don't care about your deals in tech, so they may only get news relevant to healthcare. But Kate, is there anything more formulaic that we'd want to offer?
I'm sorry, missed the main question in terms of
a successful email marketing strategy. I think this is just one of those things where each firm is going to have its own ideal, right?
Correct. I think some of these things do have to be tailored based on kind of the size of your firm, who you're reaching out to, the kind of prospects you're reaching out to. So there's a little bit of tailoring that happens. I mean, some of the concepts that we covered should though apply across everyone. The key thing is to set up metrics so you can evaluate and continuously kind of refine it as needed.
Another question coming from Evan. He said that he's seen a lot about how to nurture your list, but is there anything that the technology can do to improve visibility to prospects who are not in your system, who have not seen you?
Prospects who are not in the system.
I imagine that's going into S&P, that you want data integration with your CRM.
So I think part of it is all these data sources that you have from where you can get the list of prospects. The second aspect to it also is kind of, as I showed in one of the examples, where people are going to your website, not letting that that important piece of information get away. So keeping track of who's on your website, that will also kind of that helps a lot in terms of keeping track of prospects who you stand a better chance of having a dialogue with.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you have an M&A partner or a PE partner who's particularly active in LinkedIn discussion groups, and he or she is great at putting their name out there, they may be getting people visiting your website that your system could be capturing. And as Kate pointed out, that they become part of your watch list. Another question from Emma. This one's a little bit more technical. With the targeted emails being sent out to your prospects, is there an ability to create the emails within the program that's integrated, say Constant Contact or MailChimp, or the emails need to be created outside and imported somehow?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, you can use the email program of your choice. Kind of Constant Contact and MailChimp are very popular solutions that a lot of our customers use. So you can use those, and they do integrate, so you don't have to manually bring everything back into Navitor either.
This question coming in from Mark: does your platform have the capability of a integrated virtual data room?
Yes, it does. So I didn't cover that, but there is a full-fledged data room built into the product too. That will allow you to run your deals and obviously share documents with all the buyers. And so all the features and security and permissions are all built into that. The big advantage obviously is that you get all of that feedback right back into Navitar. So if you're talking to a buyer and you've shared a few documents, the buyer's saying they are very interested, you can quickly go in there and see if they've even looked at a document that you've uploaded. So you get real-time feedback back onto the buyer profile, and you can kind of you can manage the relationships much better.
So we'll take a few more questions, only because I wanted to keep this to 45 minutes. But rest assured that we'll follow up with each one of you once the webinar is over. This one is interesting from Rajiv. How do we assess when a prospect we may never close? Should we move on to the next one? So we're not talking about a tier 1 or tier 2. It seems like we're talking about a tier 6 or 7. Kate and Beth, would you recommend ignoring that person, or do you want some level of contact ongoing?
I'll jump in. I'll say that you never want to get rid of someone unless they unsubscribe, because situations and the market's always changing, and there's always a possibility that somebody might change their mind and want to transact. And I think you solidifying your position in their mind as a thought leader and a subject matter expert in their industry will help keep you top of mind to them, regardless of if they're thinking about a transaction right now, because a lot of times people don't even think about a transaction until we bring it up to them. But I would say that you would always want to maintain some form of contact because you never know what might happen.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add on to that is something I think Beth, you had already mentioned, which is if we follow a segmentation strategy, you could move them one tier down so that they're still on your watch list, but just with a different outreach strategy.
All right, we'll take one final question. This one I kind of find interesting from a technical point of view. Beth, why don't you take it? Do you focus tracking on firms or individuals with respect to prospects? Or does it even matter?
We do both, and I think both matter. And again, I'll go back to the how that's different for the different constituencies that we have. So for buyers, I would say that it's probably more important to keep track of the account level. Depending on what industry or what the company, what our seller, right, what kind of industry they're in. You may talk to different people in the buyer's company, but as far as the targets for our prospects for our sell side M&A, it's more contact specific. And so I would, it's really important to keep track of both layers, the account level and the contact. And, Navatar does a really good job of being able to integrate both of those so that you can see all the activity at both the account and the contact level. So, if I send an email to the CEO of the company, when I go to the company, it shows that I've reached out to that company and who at that company I've reached out to. So it does a good job of managing both layers, because I think, depending on what circumstance you're contacting, the person or the company, it's important to see both layers of that.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that because it is important. So whatever system you are using, you want a window into what your firm's relationship looks like at an institutional level, so company to firm, and then with the individual contact, because that contact Paul at widget company or widget factory A may move to widget factory B, and if he already has a knowledge of you and your business, then great, you've already got a foot in the door in that company that he's moved on to. So allow me to thank both Kate and Beth for joining me here today. We want to keep this to 45 minutes. Rest assured, a recording of today's broadcast will be emailed to you either today or tomorrow, so very quickly. And I see that there are a number of questions that we were not able to get to. Rest assured, we will follow up with you individually. And a number of these questions you can actually find answers to on the Navitar website, which is www.navitargroup.com. And if you go to our thought leadership section, you can see a number of past recordings where we answer questions like, what types of marketing tools should I be using? How should I be segmenting my prospects? There's a ton of good content there. I encourage you to check it out. So thank you for your time here today. If you'd like to reach out to either myself or Beth, you can also see our contact details there. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.